has been roughly a week since we got our first review of the new Pokémon generation, Winds and Waves, and reception to it has been very positive. It's been a long while since I've seen the Pokémon community this happy, to be honest. It made me want to take a second look at the trailer and try to go deeper into what mysteries may be packed into it and what we can expect when the game launches next year. Before we start, two very brief things of note. First of all, I will be referring back to my own analysis of the trailer at several points in this video, so if you are wondering what I'm talking about and feel like I'm skipping over things, you might want to check that video out later. Secondly, I have not been following the leaks at all, so everything I say is completely blind. If you don't follow the leaks, you know just as much as I do. If you do follow the leaks, you may hear me say things you know aren't true. Anyway, let's get started by what I am utterly convinced is the start of the game. This enormous building with the Pokeball on top. In my initial analysis, I was still a bit on the fence on whether this was a resort or a hotel, which I suppose is not a world of difference, but after some further deliberation, I'm definitely leaning more towards a luxurious hotel. We see no signs that the building offers anything else but the occasional pool, and from a story standpoint, it would make much more sense for this to be a hotel. After all, the idea of a hotel was that you stay there, but leave to explore whatever your holiday destination is. A resort is the destination, with everything you can ever dream of included. Since we'll be venturing into the region, a hotel makes a lot more sense. It's also the perfect answer as to why our player character enters this unknown region. A holiday is this game's equivalent to the traditional moving in most games do. That said, what I do find noteworthy and perhaps a small crack in the theory is the appearance of the main characters. They don't look like tourists even slightly, they look like full-fledged adventurers, so perhaps there is more to this hotel than meets the eye. We don't see any guests in this footage after all, so it is possible this hotel doubles as a research center or a battle facility or whatever else. I doubt it will be similar to Hotel ZA though. Not only do I not expect Game Freak to do the struggling hotel thing back to back, this place also looks way too luxurious and thriving to have fallen on hard times. What I do fully expect though is something I've already alluded to in my analysis, the return of a version-exclusive main location. Just like the Academy in Paldea is either the Orange Naranja Academy or the Purple Ufa Academy, I fully expect this hotel to also change names and signature colors depending on whether you buy Pokémon Winds or Waves. The evidence for this is clear to see in the design of the protagonists. Usually, Pokémon games have a design difference between the male and female character, see Sword and Shield or Legend ZA, but Scarlet and Violet broke that trend and essentially gave us 4 starter characters. 2 male, 2 female, both having a Scarlet variant and a Violet variant. Since we also have 4 protagonist designs this time, with Winds going with white highlights and an emblem that shows a gust of wind, and Waves having blue highlights and an emblem representing the waves, it seems extremely likely to me that these differences correspond to a different main location, which I would then presume is this hotel. Now, we know from Scarlet and Violet that these version differences can go pretty far. After all, that game has version exclusive professors, completely different Paradox Pokémon and more. While we obviously can't deduce that much from what we know now, I do feel like pointing out that not only is the coloration in the player characters' outfits different, so are the literal items of clothing. The characters in Winds wear rancher hats and have small satchels on both their head as well as their belt. It makes them look more adventurous compared to their Waves counterpart, who wear a simple cap, bearing a logo and have no satchels whatsoever, giving them a look that you could describe as a bit more casual, a bit more touristy. Now, obviously I can't imagine one game gets to explore and the other just doesn't, so it could simply be a design choice to highlight the different kinds of travelers you see in the world without any bearing on the story or gameplay. The same thing applies to a detail pointed out by Austin Storm 4551 on my last video, who highlighted that the Winds characters appear to have outfits befitting of flight mobility, while the Waves characters look more waterproof. For example, their backpacks don't have flaps and are as such waterproof, and they don't have satchels with zippers. Definitely a good point, but it does fall in the category of explains design differences. I'm not sure it has a gameplay result. After all, I doubt Winds players won't be allowed to dive underwater, for example. While we're on the topic of the protagonist though, I want to talk about the gadget they're holding. In my initial analysis, I called this a hoverboard, which it might be, but I do now think there are actually more likely candidates than that. While the website does make clear we'll need our Pokémon to traverse the nature of this region, I personally suspect we won't be using a Pokémon to travel over water specifically. The reason for that is because we can see in the footage already that the sea here is pretty wild, with a lot of waves and currents, and I don't think a whole bunch of surfing Pokemon would make for the best fit of that, from a gameplay perspective. It would force Game Freak to either 1. Create another legendary that spends the entire game alongside us and can be used as a vehicle, 2. Bring back ride Pokemon from Sun and Moon, 3. Create surfing animations for every single Pokemon who can feasibly use surf, or 4. Heavily limit what Pokemon can be used to traverse water, which would be a big regression back to the days of HMs. I suspect neither of these 4 are what Game Freak is gonna want, which means that using a Pokemon to go from island to island is pretty unlikely in my eyes. And so, this is where this board comes in. It could certainly be a hoverboard, make no mistake about that, but looking at the theme of the games and how wild the ocean appears to be, I think we're actually looking at the board of either a windsurf setup or a kitesurf setup. Think about it. Both those methods of travel literally use both the winds and the waves to traverse across the sea, and it would also really help set these games apart from others that do something similar, as almost all those games use ships. Now, both are viable options, and from an outsider view, the difference is massive. Kitesurfing uses an actual kite, higher up in the sky, to move you forward, while windsurfing uses a sail attached to a board. So from that perspective, I would say that looking at this board in the image, kitesurfing makes the most sense, but the board does look futuristic enough to potentially expand into having a sail on it as well. But yeah, I'm feeling pretty confident either of these methods is what we'll be using as a method of transportation. Hell, the player characters even appear to be wearing wetsuits underneath their clothing. Look at how the clothing item covering their legs appears to also be covering their arms and their chest. It's clearly one black thing and it looks a lot like a wetsuit, just like wind and kitesurfers wear. Oh, and in case you missed it, this board is designed to look like a Nintendo Switch, which is a neat throwback. Back in the day, we used to often have devices, and even the Pokédex, resemble the modern Nintendo consoles, but ever since the introduction of smartphones, most devices have resembled that. I'm pretty sure this is the first time we have had a device that resembles a Nintendo system since ORAS had a Pokédex that looked like a Game Boy Advance. And even that was already a throwback. Alright, enough about the player characters, I want to take a look at the other 2 characters that have been introduced. The bizarre Pikachu duo known as Mr. Windychew and Mrs. Wavychew. It has been confirmed through the website that these 2 will play a role in the story to some extent, and while they aren't listed as being version exclusive, their name definitely suggests that they are. It's also worth pointing out that while the English names make these 2 sound like your superior, seeing as they are called Mr. and Mrs., like you would call a teacher for example, the Japanese name actually incorporates the words kun and chan, which are used for young people instead. So, I don't think these 2 are necessarily going to play a role as a guiding figure, as I have seen some people suggest, including even the idea they might be the professors this time around. Instead, my current theory, based on the limited information we have, is that they are the mascots of the hotel, which would then make them version exclusive. Mr. Windychew would be the mascot for the Winds Hotel and Mrs. Wavychew for the Waves Hotel. After all, they are very clearly designed to represent tourists, not adventurers, not researchers, not trainers. I mean, they even have a tan. That would make them the perfect representatives of a hotel or something else in the tourist industry, and putting their clearly version-based names together with my theory of version-exclusive hotels, 1 + 1 = 2. Especially since they both wear the same headgear as the version-exclusive playable character. Had this been all, I would have been willing to put money on this theory, but there is one thing that is throwing me off a little. Mr. Windychew has a penchant of sorts on his tail, and this symbol, it is a match to the mysterious symbol seen in the Japanese logo for the game. Now, in the past we've seen that the Japanese logos sometimes have very important symbols on them, like the Z crystal for Sun and Moon for example, so it could very well be the case again here. In which case, that brings up the question, if this is tied into a major part of the game, potentially the unique battle gimmick, why does Mr. Windychew have it on its tail? And why does Mrs. Wavychew not have it on her person, or Pikachu? This is definitely a potential problem for the version-dependent angle, as I'm not sure they would incorporate such a seemingly important design decision for only half of the games. We are entering pure speculation area here, without much evidence to go off, but if this symbol ties into this Pikachu duo directly, could it perhaps be standing for some sort of gimmick that turns people into Pokémon? These two obviously have pretty clear humanoid design choices to them, like the outfits. And don't forget that Scarlet and Violet's DLC already introduces a sort of test feature almost, where you could play as a Pokemon briefly with the Synchro machine. Could Game Freak be going all in on that, and is that who Mr. Windychew and Mrs. Wavychew actually are? It's impossible to say, there is no evidence whatsoever at this point, but it is possible. I don't see a reason why it couldn't be the case. But okay, let's get back to what can actually be deduced from the trailer with at least some evidence, like the region itself. I already theorized in my analysis that this looked a lot like Southeast Asia, and when keeping that in mind, Indonesia is by far the most likely candidate, seeing as the entire country is islands separated by sea, which is pretty much what this region appears to be. And that was all before I even noticed this shot of the hills appeared to feature rice fields, which are about as big of a sign of an Asian region, particularly Southeast Asian, as you're ever gonna get. I also went back to the text found here on the cliff, and while it's not like there is this set in stone Pokemon language alphabet, from what I can tell, this appears to be complete gibberish. What the trailer also makes very clear is that this new region is gonna be filled with unique and, at this point, rarely seen biomes. Just in this short trailer alone, we have jungles and what appears to be a lava-filled volcano, both of which have not appeared in a Pokemon region since Alola, and a sort of hybrid between a swamp and a mangrove, which we have never really seen before in general. Another interesting point to consider is that, just like Sun and Moon were for the 20th, you could say this game is being positioned as an anniversary game. Now, it no longer releases in the actual anniversary year, seeing as it is a 2027 game, but if this had any influence on development decisions, we might see a larger number of callbacks to past games than the previous two Switch games had. Well, they essentially had none. Sun and Moon brought back Red and Blue, as well as a relative of Professor Oak in Samson Oak, which I always felt was influenced by the idea these were anniversary titles. So in that light, I wouldn't be surprised if we have some returning characters this time around, especially the hotel theme would suit it quite nicely. And while talking about the region and what we can see of it, we of course cannot overlook probably the biggest talking point this trailer has created. That cloud. That damned dark cloud at the end of the trailer, which appears to have a silhouette that resembles a dragon or a Gyarados too much to be a coincidence. I have replayed this segment in the trailer like 5 billion times, and the more I look at it, the more I think something doesn't add up. If you look at the way the clouds on the center of the screen move, the black cloud doesn't do that at all. It stays completely put, even though, as we can see when the camera shifts to go underwater, I believe it's actually closer to the camera than you might initially think. It initially appears to be hovering over the large island in the distance, but once the camera goes down, I think you can start to see a difference in distance between the black cloud and the white cloud behind it, revealing the black cloud may actually be hovering above the sea instead. And if that is the case, the fact it doesn't move on the wind like the clouds to the left do is incredibly suspicious and leaves me to believe this might not actually be a cloud at all. What it could then be, that's very hard to say. It could be a massive Pokemon, it could be a shadow potentially, it could be something we're not even thinking of right now. But I'm at this point fully in the camp of, this is significant, this is not a random cloud. And speaking of significant, let's take a brief look at the starters and their potential evolutions next. Broud clearly has a prominent eyebrow theme going on, with that really being the only place its grass type comes in, as well as the fact that it's, well, literally in the name in every single language. Keeping that in mind, it seems likely that its final evolution might take inspiration from the spot-bellied eagle owl. These birds are native to Southeast Asia, where I assume our games take place, and have extremely prominent eyebrows, so you can probably see where I'm going with this. Now, it would mean another owl starter, just like the Decidueye, but then again, we also have our second lizard-like water starter in a few generations, so I'm not sure Game Freak cares about things like that. When it comes to early fan favorite Bonbon, I feel there's not a lot that can be said about it. It could go anywhere from a wolf that stays on all fours to an Incineroar-like humanoid Pokemon. There is very little to guess here, especially since Pomeranian dogs are far from native to Southeast Asia. They come from Central Europe. All I'm willing to rule out is a future dark type, seeing as the website specifically calls it guileless. Gekwa is also not easy to predict, but I can't help but shake the feeling we'll be looking at another strongly gender-coded Pokemon here, as starters have definitely been in the past. And in this case, I'm definitely thinking feminine, especially due to the eyelashes, which give it a vibe that reminds me of Salazzle, easily one of the most gender-coded Pokemon in the entire franchise. It also wouldn't surprise me if its final evolution is both bipedal and quadrupedal at the same time, seeing as Gekwa actually is like that as well. In the trailer, we can see it can both stand on its hind legs and on all fours. But yeah, that's all I can really say about that for now. We're gonna need more footage and details first. But before I go out, one more detail that I probably should have included in my analysis, but hey, better late than never. In this shot of Pikachu getting caught, we can see animations and a camera position that strongly resembles what we saw in Scarlet and Violet, suggesting that the battle system from that game will return rather than the more freeform structure seen in Legends Arceus and most recently Legends EA. It definitely suggests turn-based battles are here to stay, although I suppose that cannot be 100% confirmed yet, even if it does look likely. How do you feel about these theories? And do you have any of your own? Share it in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like and subscribing. If you really want to support me, you can now become a channel member to get all kinds of fun perks and help me keep bringing these videos to your doorstep every week. For now, thanks for watching and enjoy the rest of your day.